Before you can start stitching, you'll need to gather some basic supplies. It can be pretty daunting when you're starting something new and tricky to know exactly what you'll need when there's so many different options. In this tutorial, I'll run you through what you need to know to help you make the right choices when you're gathering your supplies. The first thing to consider before starting your project is the thread you'll use. Once you begin to look, you'll find that there's so many different types of thread for stitchery and embroidery, and every one of them will give you different results for different stitches, so it's easy to become overwhelmed. Threads predominantly come in skeins and balls. Skeins are measured by meters or yards, and the balls are measured by weight. It's also good to try and remember that with thread sizes, the higher the number, the finer the thread. The most common threads you'll come across are 6-stranded cotton, pearl, broder, and occasionally wool. 6-stranded cotton is the main type of thread that you'll find is used across the board for stitching and embroidery. Like the name suggests, the cotton is made up of 6 smaller strands of cotton that are loosely twisted together. Traditionally, you'll find that most patterns require you to stitch with 2 strands of cotton unless otherwise stated. DMC is probably the most well-known brand of threads, and it's available in most craft stores. Cottage garden threads are my favourite of all specialty thread brands. Every single thread from Cottage garden threads is hand-dyed and goes through a beautiful conditioning process, making them less likely to tangle or knot when you're working with them. Each thread is then hand-packaged in specially designed packaging to display and keep your threads tidy. I guess I'm also slightly biased because Cottage garden threads are the makers behind my very own thread range, Namesake. You'll easily recognise pearl threads by their sheen and high lustre. Unlike the 6-stranded cotton that lays flat, pearl cotton is twisted and sits more distinctively on top of your fabric. Pearl threads are still 100% cotton but are not divisible like the 6-stranded cotton. They come in several different sizes, 3, 5, 8 and 12. The most common sizes being 8 and 12. Size 3 is similar to a full 6 strands of cotton, while a size 12 is more like a single strand of cotton. Broder is similar to a pearl thread in that it is 100% cotton, twisted, non-divisible, but it's a combed cotton thread, which you can see doesn't have as high a sheen or lustre to it. Broder is available in several sizes. The most common size is a number 25 and is equal to approximately 1.5 strands of a 6-stranded cotton. You can of course stitch with any ply of wool, presuming you can find a suitable size needle with a large enough eye. The most common type of wool used for stitching is a tapestry wool, and this is generally a 4-ply. I personally prefer to stitch with 2-ply wools when I'm wanting to add some extra texture to my work and try to stick to natural wool blends rather than acrylic. There's lots of needles on the market to choose from, and different people have different opinions on choosing the right one. Needles are often labelled as to what they're best used for, but there's a few things to consider when you're choosing yours. Firstly, I like to make sure that I've got a nice sharp tip for easily piercing the fabric I'm working with. Using a needle with a dull end, like a tapestry needle, can damage the weave of your fabric and leave holes throughout your work, particularly if you don't put your needle in the right place to begin with. Like thread, needles have sizes too. The larger the number, the finer the needle. I generally stick to using a size 7 or a size 8 needle. I often find that I hold my needle quite tightly when I'm stitching, usually because of stress. So when I'm choosing a needle, I will also make sure that I choose a brand known for their strength. You'll find that some makes of needles are generally shorter and others are longer. I find that having a little bit of extra length in a needle is helpful, especially if you're doing decorative stitches that requires you to wrap your thread around your needle several times. Having a longer needle also enables you plenty of space to see the tip of your needle when you're holding it. There's 2 main types of needles that I'll use when stitching. Chenille needles have sharp points and large eyes like embroidery needles, however are shorter and wider and have long eyes. Chenille needles are more suitable when you're stitching with wool and thicker thread like broder or all 6 strands of your 6-stranded cotton. Milliner's needles are usually slightly longer needles with sharp ends and smaller round eyes. I'll use Milliner's needles most of the time when I'm stitching with 2 strands of cotton. There's really no limit to what you can stitch on, but I'd advise sticking to woven fabrics with an even weave rather than knitted and stretchy fabrics. The best fabrics to stitch on are linen, linen cotton blends and quilting weight cottons. I like to choose those with low volume prints. Choosing a hoop usually comes down to a personal preference that suits you. You need to find a hoop that you feel comfortable holding and using. Some people choose not to use a hoop, however I find that using a hoop will retain the tension in the fabric I'm working on without it puckering around my stitches. Hoops range in sizes from 3 to 12 inches in diameter. You can get smaller mini-sized hoops which can be used for specialty projects. Larger sized hoops are also available, but these are mainly used for quilting purposes. When working on larger projects, it's normal to stitch one area at a time and then move your hoop around the fabric to stitch different areas. Different shaped hoops are also available, but are more so used for displaying your work in rather than working your stitchery. One exception to this is oval hoops. Smaller oval hoops can be easier to work with for some people, especially for those who might suffer with arthritis or RSI, as your hand doesn't need to stretch as much to hold your hoop. Other things I like to keep in my stitching kit are a small sharp pair of snips. These will give you a nice clean cut on your thread every time and make threading your needle easier. A needle minder. This attaches securely to your work to hold your needle when you take a break from stitching. It will also save your work from being damaged if you're the type of person to pin their needle through their project. Finger savers are the new age thimble. They'll protect the end of your finger from being poked and prodded by the end of your needle while sewing. A sew line styler is also really useful. It's a water erasable marker with a ceramic rolling ball point, which gives smooth movement across fabrics without snagging or damaging the weave. The 0.8mm point gives a fine line that doesn't bleed and gives an even laydown of ink. I use the Cottage Garden Threads wool pressing cloth. It allows my stitches to sink gently into the surface of the cloth while the background fabric is being pressed perfectly flat, ensuring that my stitches are not flattened or dulled down in the process. I also use the Heaven Sent Spray Starch. Not only does it smell absolutely divine, but it's also specially designed for patchworking and stitching. It won't stiffen your fabric to the point of no return, but a nice quick spritz while ironing your fabric will provide a crisp surface to transfer your design onto and stitch on. I'll give my work another spray once I have finished my design and am ironing my finished project with my pressing cloth. So now it's time to hunt and gather all of your supplies. Thanks for watching.